Well, I think I know most of you, but if there's anybody here that does not know me, I'm Kathie Thatcher, and I have the somewhat dubious distinction of being the oldest member of our deacon group here at Holy Communion. Now, they do say that with age comes wisdom. Well, you can tell by the color of my hair, I've got the age thing down. The wisdom part is still a bit iffy. However, today's gospel is crammed with God's wisdom, so I'm off the hook. You might call this Sunday's gospel God's little instruction book, because in this gospel, everything you need to know is condensed into 2 easy and very wise commandments. The first one is called the greatest commandment, to love God with all our hearts, all of our souls, and all of our minds. We are being asked for our supreme and undivided love for God. We are asked to become totally committed, to be all in with God or not at all. This first commandment, for many of us, can be difficult to grasp. How can you love someone you can't see or touch? The whole idea can be pretty nebulous. I know it was hard for me to grasp this concept. I think God knew that we might have trouble getting our heads around this, for he wisely tells us in the second commandment to love our neighbor as ourselves. I'm sure you all remember the parable of the Good Samaritan, so you know who your neighbor is. And also, there's the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. The story doesn't tell us that the rich man was a bad person, and maybe he wasn't. What it does say is that even though Lazarus sat begging outside his gate every day, the rich man never even noticed him. Are we too guilty of not seeing the poor in our community, of not seeing God in them? In Matthew 25, verses 35 to 40, Jesus speaks about Judgment Day, of the good and the evil. God will tell those he has placed on his right side to inherit the kingdom prepared for them. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. Naked, and you clothed me. Then the righteous will ask, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or naked? The king answers, whatever you did for one of my brothers, even the very least of them, you did unto me. In other words, God is present in everyone, even the poor, the hungry, the destitute. In 1 John 4, verse 12, we are reminded that if we love one another, God dwells in us, and his love is perfected in us. There is a scene in Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Les Miserables when Marius tells his beloved Cosette, to look with love upon another is to see the face of God. I love this quotation. To look with love upon another is to see the face of God. Let's take a minute to look around us. Do you see God in anyone? Oh, how about Bishop Jim and Father David? Well, sometimes maybe more than others. Now look closely at the person sitting on either side of you. Can you see God in that person? Well, that might not be too difficult either. After all, we are in church, and we're about to take God into our bodies in the form of Holy Communion. How about when you leave church today and you see a homeless person holding a sign asking for food or money? Can you see God? What about the rude person in the grocery store? You knew I'd get around to that sooner or later, didn't you? Or the person whose political views clash with yours? Or the driver who cuts you off at the roundabout? Now it's getting a little harder. And here's a really tough one. Who do you see when your 2-year-old is throwing a tantrum in a crowd of people? Or when your rebellious teenage daughter screams, I hate you, As a mother, I know that sometimes you have to look really, really hard. And here's another piece of God's wisdom in today's gospel. The second part of love your neighbor that most people don't, love your neighbor as yourself, that most people don't even think about, is to love yourself. But God wants us to love ourselves. He specifically said so. He wants us to value ourselves. He wants us to see the good in ourselves. There's a quotation in Alice Walker's book, The Color Purple, where one character reassures her friend, telling her, God don't make junk. Remember, even at your lowest moments, you will never, ever be junk because God made you and dwells in you. Always remember that we were made in the image and likeness of God. So, go home and look in the mirror. God is right there inside you. My hope is that when you see your reflection, you will also see God. And even better, that you will reflect God to others. May this be the day that others see God in you.